Hello and welcome to another conversation about conversations. I am your co-host Jakub Kubrak. Today with us we have some other co-hosts, a lady legend by her own, Jules Swisher, and a new co-host for today's episode, Skye, as well as the man, the myth, the legend, Ivan Farber.
Thank you, Jakub.
Good
Thanks
morning,
for being here, everybody.
Great.
Jakub,
Yes, thank you for having me.
we're glad to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone also from Queens, always a guest. All of Queens, New York, anywhere else in the country, other countries.
Yes.
Jakub, what have you been up to? We missed you.
Vacation, just being with the kids. That's about it. How about you? How about you guys? How's your summer been going?
Jules,
Anybody?
The thing is with this is we always talk over each other, so I'm trying really hard not to. I'm just like trying to wait until the next person talks. Maybe we could establish like a cadence of who talks first, but yeah, summer's been great. I have been getting into all the adventures here in Bend. It's just like one thing after the next. It's been so fun. This is my first summer here, so it's like a whole nother game here. It's awesome. I love it. How about you, Mr. Farber? Sorry, that makes you uncomfortable. How about you, Ivan?
Makes Jakub especially uncomfortable, but it makes me uncomfortable too. I've been playing a game called 25 for 25, and I was nominated to play it. So it's not like I went out and said, hey, let me play this, but it's you do 25 push-ups for 25 days. You videotape it, you put it on social media, and it's raising awareness for mental health issues and suicide prevention. When I was first nominated, I was thinking maybe the ice bucket challenge would be quicker and more painless. But here's the thing. It's a burden to have mental illness. So if all I have to do is do 25 push-ups for 25 days, that's nothing.
Agreed.
Is there?
I've seen your videos, Ivan, on Facebook, and I love it. I loved your last one because you had on your biking helmet and your full biking getup, and I just love watching it. It's the best.
Good. I'll do that again.
Ivan, what day are you at right now?
I will record day 6 after this. Maybe I'll leave my tie on and record day 6.
Very, very nice.
So Jakub, before we get started, how about a word from our sponsors?
Sure. Always grateful to our sponsors, Imago Ansa. We got 503 Building for all your wood building needs, doing a great job out there. I Excel, if you haven't heard of it, look it up. Great site. And obviously Conversations About Conversations, a great book.
Speaking of conversations, I happen to have a copy right here.
Always.
And Skye, as a thank you for participating in today's episode, I'm going to send you a copy as a thank you.
Awesome. I've been looking forward to reading your book.
Awesome. The premise for the episode is in the preface. You like that? The premise is in the preface.
Nice.
Paragraph 2, success in your career depends on your ability to gain agreement for action. If you improve your ability to retain and grow client relationships through powerful conversations, you'll become more valuable to your company, make more money, and increase your job satisfaction. And here's the crux. There is no skill more important than the ability to be effective in conversations. And that's why we're here, for the people, Jakub.
The people.
For the people, Jules and Skye, because it's conversations that make the difference. And in other words, the sky is the limit.
When it comes to conversations.
That's right. Speaking of Skye, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better, Skye.
Yes. So speaking of Skye, I guess my name, one thing that is my common fun fact at the top of my head is my dad was a pilot and my mom was a flight attendant. And so they met in the sky, and lo and behold, had to name me Skye, but with an E at the end. So it's a slight different. But it's been good, and it's always a great conversation icebreaker, should I say.
Are you a pilot?
I am not. However, I have flown a few times. My dad would have small airplanes that he would take up every now and then and let me fly with him. I remember he would put like a pen on the dashboard, pull the nose up, push it down, hit some G's. It was great. So I have a lot of great memories with him flying. And then, yeah, it's been good.
That's an incredible experience. I've been thinking about getting a pilot's license now that I've got my boating license.
Okay.
Just kind of stack them up, but I don't know, man. I don't trust a lot of those smaller planes. You got to be with somebody that knows what they're doing all the time. So that's awesome.
Experience definitely matters when it comes to that. So.
What was the pen for?
So you put the pen on the dashboard. When you pull the nose of the plane up and then push it down, it kind of just has like this effect. And it's just like no gravity, like zero gravity, and the pen floats and you try to catch it. And then sometimes you'll float too a little bit out of your seat. So it's so fun. Your stomach, everything's shifting around, but it's a great time.
Oh my gosh, Skye, you're like way cooler than all three of us.
Oh,
combined.
absolutely not.
Skye, do you have any siblings?
I do. I have 2 older brothers. One is in Nashville, one's in Oklahoma. They are much older than I am. So I was an aunt at the age of 6. But yeah, I do have siblings, and it's just us 3 and my folks.
Did they name any of them like Landon or Landing or?
Okay, no, but my oldest brother's name is Ty, like Ty. It's not even short for Tyler. And so there's Ty and Skye, and that was a nightmare, getting our names mixed up. It rhymes. I don't know why they did that, but.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to your parents. Hopefully they're listening to this one.
Hopefully. Very nice.
Maybe not.
I'll definitely send them these links.
There you go. There you go. No, I'm sure they'd love to hear it. And you started a knitting company in college and all that cool stuff. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I remember being at a Michael's one day and I just was looking for something to do. I think I went there to pick up like a photo frame, and I saw this beginner knitting kit and decided, hey, I'll try that out. It was really difficult at first to get the hang of, but once I did, it was great. And it was a great outlet for me. And it really frustrates me when I can't figure things out. And so knitting was like a perfect thing to dive into, unknot, if you will.
Yeah, and it gives you something to do on the plane.
Yeah, absolutely.
It all circles back. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
So Skye, we love that you listen to the show. We're curious, what's like an example of something you've learned from listening?
Yeah, so one of the first podcasts of you and Jakub that I had listened to was about the 10 potholes. And one that really resonated with me was the pothole of rushing, because I know that I work in a client operations department where it's a very operational role, yet I still have interaction and contact with external clients, internal clients, whatever that, falls under. And I think that in the beginning of my career, it was really easy to accept the fact that I'm in operations, there is a relationship manager. It's not my job or my place to, have these meaningful conversations. But in reality, that's really not the case. You're still a voice that someone's interacting with. You're still, why not have a meaningful conversation? And so I think I really liked how you did propose that about the rushing, especially in operations, we do have a sort of hidden agenda. It's calling whatever to get information, to obtain something. There's always an end goal. And I just kind of used to just stop short at that end goal. And I think, after listening to that about the 10 potholes, the one about, let me hear your list before telling you my list, and just seeing all about open-ended questions and just letting them talk. And I think that when I went back to work that next day, I tried that out, and some of it worked half the time it didn't, but I got to know a little bit about people. So I think that that's something that I'm looking to do, is constantly improve that and think outside the realm. And that does kind of tie into the latest podcast that you did with Jules regarding going outside of your comfort zone. Like that might not be in my job description to ask other questions, but it's making me grow, and I think it'll prepare me for the next step in my life. So I think the potholes were a great, you know, kind of endeavor into your podcast. And from there, really liked it.
Love that.
We really appreciate that. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little nugget on there. All those things, you know, the potholes, the getting over, the rushing, those are all like little arrows in your quiver when you're out there, you know, hunting or doing whatever it is in life. And so you just learn to apply those in specific times. And like you said, they'll work half the times and you'll know when to apply them. And then the other half the times it'll be something else that'll work and you'll know how to apply that too. But again, thank you so much for listening.
Right, exactly. Yes. Thank you for guys creating this and coming on every Sunday to do this. It's awesome.
We appreciate that.
What are your goals, Skye? What are some of your career aspirations?
I mean, right now I'm in a very entry-level role, and I think that I just would like to get to places of more leadership positions. I would like to be more client-facing and just get more involved. I think that, you know, just to give you some vague career objectives and goals would most likely be that. I do want to assume more leadership positions, and I think that along with that comes you have to be a good communicator. You have to know how to articulate the thoughts in your head and get that across the right way. And so that is something that I'm constantly looking to improve on myself as well.
Yeah.
It's the conversations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It never stops, even with yourself.
And Skye, when you get promoted, not if, but when, you are going to have all the practice in the world with these conversations. You're going to be ready to go.
Yes.
The toughest client won't even be ready for Skye Peck.
That's the hope and goal, but we'll see.
Very true. Very true. And Ivan, this is why it's so important that you're doing those 25 for 25, because again, mental health is one of those things that is, you know, like we talk about conversations with ourselves, just making sure that when you're having those conversations, they're always positive and so forth, because it's so easy to slide down the road and thing when maybe you're not looking for help and so forth. So we definitely appreciate that. And maybe we can make a donation as well on behalf of Conversations, as well as the push-ups.
Love it. Love it. So that's a good segue to our explore section, our roundtable discussion. And I've got two questions lined up for us today. The first question is, why are conversations the most important skill? And two, what do you see as the limits to your career? So let's go round robin in order. Why are conversations the most important skill we can develop? Jakub, let's start with you.
Wow. So it's like the or not the monetary, but it's like the currency of life, right? I mean, when you speak with yourself or you speak to someone else, if you're not having positive conversations or good conversations, you're not going to get to where you want to be, right? A good analogy is like you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? Same thing in conversations. Like you get more out of positive conversations than you do out of negative ones, even if they're hard.
Jules, how about you?
Yeah, Jakub, I love how you always get so deep on us we're not prepared for it. I love it. I think conversations are the gateway to anything and everything, no matter what. If you are client facing, everybody is, if in a professional sense, both client facing and internal, and no matter what, you're having a conversation. And if you know how to manage conversations well, there's really no limit. There's not anything that could ever stop you, because you know how to talk to your manager, you know how to talk to your clients, you know how to get promoted, you know how to have a conversation about promotion. And then I argue, Ivan doesn't think this, but I think that the conversation in your head, the conversation with yourself, is the most important conversation. And Ivan, what you're doing 25 for 25, I love that, because I think every professional, like, it's such a lie that there's a subset of people that struggle with mental illness. Mental illness is a spectrum, and it's like I think everybody on some level deals with some anxiety, some minor depression, and then all the way, you know, some more extreme than others. But having that conversation in your head and making sure that you're not limiting yourself and your opportunities and what you can do with your clients. Like, I find sometimes that my conversation in my head can be a little bit fearful, like fearful of what I want to do, fearful of saying the wrong thing. And so managing that has been really important. I've learned a ton already just working with Ivan and Jakub and now Skye, who we're so happy to have. But yeah, I mean, I think really, like, if you know how to have a good conversation with anyone, no matter what the topic, no matter who the person, then you're set, you're good.
Actually, Jules, I agree with you. So I guess I disagree that you disagree that I agree with you. It is the most important conversation, because ultimately the person that we hear the most from is the person in our head, our inner voice, and the ability to give yourself pep talks or to interrupt that conversation that's going on in your head that's negative, because that's pretty common. It's not pretty common. It's universal. So, Skye, what about you? What do you think about conversations and why it's the most important skill?
Yeah, and also just to piggyback off of what Jules was saying about, you know, having how it is really important having a conversation in your head. I definitely agree with that as well, because what you think, you know, the conversations that you have in your head is going to have a domino effect with what you're, you know, conversing to other people. So it can definitely affect that, you know, whether it's negatively, that you're internalizing a lot of negative emotions, and that could come out in how you speak to other people. And so it is really important to have positive conversations with yourself, and just communication in general, when done effectively, is the means to get what you want, you know, which is really aggressive to put it in that sense, but in a way you have to express how you feel, and on the other end, listen to other people as well. So it's a two-play. And I think you had even mentioned in another podcast that listening was almost a more important role, because having conversations, kind of what Jules was saying, is really important that you're having with yourself, because the conversations and the dialogue that's going on internally with you is also going to reflect how you speak to others. So I think it's really important that you do have that positive dialogue with yourself, and also just can communicate, because that will also transition and just have that domino effect when speaking with others. So in communication is just a means to get what you want, blankly put in that sense. You have to say what you want. You have to learn how to express yourself. And if you do it the right way and effectively, 9 out of 10 times, you will get that positive response. And Ivan, in an earlier podcast, you mentioned something about how the listeners also play such a huge, if not a more important role, because not when you're listening to say something, you know, preemptively or prematurely, but just to have that good back and forth dialogue and connection is what will further, you know, along your relationship with that person, and you'll get to that next step. So I think communication is very important, and it's definitely an underrated skill that isn't thought of as much, I feel like. So it's important that you're having these conversations about conversations.
It's really deep.
Randy Moss deep.
Put on your waders, folks. We are going deep today.
So I didn't even think about that conversations about conversations, that one of the most, if not the most important conversation is the conversation you have with yourself. Jules, that opens up a whole new direction for the bus to ride in. So that's super. Now speaking of the bus, and speaking of limits to the bus and where the bus can go, what does everyone see? And we'll go in the same order. So Jakub, start getting your wheels turning there. What do you see as the limits to your career?
Just Joe Montana throws like 100 yards down the field. I mean, the limit to anything is you, right? You could be your own worst enemy. And that's why even like mental health, right? The way you phrase that, whether it's mental health or mental illness, I think plays a big difference. And that's why this cause is so important. because we all want to be mentally healthy, right? To say that we don't have conversations with ourselves is just, you're lying to yourself. And that's why it's so important to know how to have those conversations and, you know, say the right things to yourself. But I think that's the biggest limit in anything, right? Because I mean, in this day and age, you can do anything, right? I mean, look at, you know, what people are being successful at, and even when people fail, they're successful at other things. And so just control your own destiny as much as you can.
So you're the limit, basically.
Yeah, the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit.
Sky's only the limit for Skye.
Yeah.
Sky's the limit for all of
Exactly,
us.
Ivan. Yes, that's exactly right.
Jules, how about you? What do you see as the limits?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Jacob. The only thing that's ever going to limit me is myself. Now, if I ever find myself in a position with a company where there is no upward mobility, or I know I deserve to move upward, and for some reason that's not happening, or I'm being blocked, I'll just move to another company, right? So it's never like I'm ever truly limited, because if I do find myself where there's a limit, or you can only go this far, then I'll just move and leave and go find something better where I can move up, or where I can do whatever it is that I'm trying to do. So in that sense, I mean, it's kind of all on you. It's all about having the right conversations in your head. And let's be honest, we're not all having the right conversations in your head. Every single day, I'm like, whoa, Jules, slow down. You just went like 10 steps ahead of yourself. So I think that awareness is really important. Being aware of the way that you're talking about yourself, the way that you're thinking about your career, thinking about your next steps. That's really important. It's so easy to get really caught up and forget about the bigger picture of where you're trying to go and what your dreams are, what your goals are. And so you have to constantly be aware of the way that you are thinking. Whether it is hyper focused in one thing and you're forgetting about what you're ultimately trying to do. So yeah, I mean, I'm with Jacob. You're the only limit. The sky's the limit for Skye. Jules is the limit for Jules. That's it.
Definitely.
Skye, what about you? What do you see as limits?
Yeah, so I think hate to say this, but I definitely am in agreement with Jules and Jacob on that as well, that you really are your own limit. But more than that, sometimes you will be in situations where you're speaking with someone and there is no changing their mind. And that's a limit that's out of your control. And so I think that when you run into that, you have to figure out a delicate way of maneuvering around that to where you can still maybe break through to that person, but then also accept that maybe you can't. And I think that, recognizing that and acknowledging when it's time to not throw in the towel. I'm not one to do that, but when to just acknowledge reality and to face that. And I think that sometimes there are limits outside of our controls, as much as we don't like that. But yeah, I definitely agree with Jules and Jacob on, at the end of the day, what you're putting in is what you're going to get out, and you should push yourself and find creative ways to maneuver around other people's limits. So.
All right, I'm going to go deep on you guys. Deep with this. I'm going to answer the question as well. What are the limits? Your past is your limit. Now here's why this deep, because your past isn't your limit, right? Like the first thing when I say your past is your limit, like your upbringing, your education, is that really my limit? Okay, but here's the concept. The occurring world is the future you're living into is how you are being right now, what you've created in language from the past. The thing about the past is we have it misfiled. We have the past misfiled in our future. So we'll say things to ourselves like, well, I never want that to happen again. So what do we wind up from our past putting in our future? That never happening again. So I'll give you an example. When I was about 5, I was comparing myself to this other kid. Ben was his name. You see, I never forget Ben, because Ben seemed to have it all. He was smart. He was good at athletics. He was He seemed popular. He could talk to people. I didn't feel like I could do that. So what did I say that I would do? I would create a future where I'm going to show him, I'm going to prove him wrong. I'm going to be successful. And this is at 5. Can you imagine what kind of 5-year-old I was? But as a result, that was my formula. My winning formula is being successful. But in myself, in my own conversation with myself, I can never be successful enough. I've filed my past and my future. But so the access to actually, and the limits that I have is actually removing that from my past and taking it out of my future and putting my past. Because then if I take that out of my future, then what's in my future? Nothing. And inside of nothing, I can create anything. Did I lose you?
I'm right here, Ivan. I love that. I love your past being misfiled. And it's subconscious. And I love that you're saying like you had a bad experience and you're thinking, I'm never going to let that happen again. Oh my gosh. I've said that 100 times to myself, right? Especially because there are some experiences that really like have a toll on you. And no matter how right you think you got with it, it still kind of lingers. So
Ivan, how would you say you do file those then? If, you don't want to misfile your past, but you can't deny that it did happen. So how do you not let that project into your future or carry over into that?
You distinguish the interpretation or story in conversation with someone else. And you have to get off it. Like you have to say, I am not going to just have success at all costs, because by becoming present to the cost is where you start to get the impact of it. So I guess one part of the impact of having to be successful is any sense of fulfillment or satisfaction. So like on top of that, geez, I have to be successful. There's no room for that. And so I'm always looking at the number of downloads for the podcast. And like last month, we broke through 500 downloads for the podcast, which was cool. So far this month, and we're close to the end of the month, but we can maybe squeak a few in. We are about to get 1,000 downloads this month. Jacob, good job.
Thanks, buddy. It's all you. It's your conversation.
But it's never enough, right? Like, so my drive. So Skye, the first step is becoming present to the impact of it's never enough. I can never be successful enough. Mm-hmm. And then inside of that, create a new way of being in that. And I recently did some work in a seminar to create a new way of being, and that was just being open.
The best way that I've always been taught to see yourself, and this is for hockey specific, I guess, but any sport, right, is you show up at the rink early and you visualize yourself, right? You see yourself on the ice doing those things. I think that's what Ivan's alluding to, is just kind of going back in your mind and seeing it from a different perspective, or seeing it somebody else would, and then kind of learning the bigger lesson. But it's, it's like a Rubik's Cube almost, right? You try and you make moves, and eventually it'll come. But yeah, great questions.
Rubik's Cube is a great metaphor. I had a Rubik's Cube back in the 80s. And I learned how to take the Rubik's Cube apart and put it back together solved. I never learned how to solve it, but I learned how to take it apart and put it back together.
Yeah.
With that, we're at the part of the show we're going to start to wrap up, and I want to go round robin again, same order, and give everybody the opportunity.
Can we reverse order?
Oh, reverse order.
Yeah, just switch it up. Make it fair.
All right, we'll do that. But just give an opportunity to make a closing statement, a parting shot, and we're going to start reverse order. Skye.
Yes. I love what you said about your past. I think it's very easy to let your past motivate you, but in a healthy way. And yeah, I think that just the challenges that you do have with roadblocks and with conversations are going to perpetuate, you know, the next conversation you have, you're constantly going to improve and get better. So, and I'm really thankful that you have this book that you've really pinpointed different roadblocks of conversations, and you've really made a way to, you've made it realize, people realize how to have conversations and to look deeper into them. And it's not just a surface level, and it's not just a casual exchange. It's a lot more than just casual encounters. So yeah, I think I'm really thankful for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jules.
Yeah, Ivan, I'm just really excited about where this podcast is going. I know your recent work with Landmark Forum and all the things that you're learning there and bringing to the podcast is huge, because at the end of the day, we're not just professionals. It's not just business. Like, every single person is a whole person with a past, with their own mental health stuff. Every human being is all encompassing, and the professional side of ourselves is just a sliver in the whole pie. And so I think what is really cool is not only talking about professionalism and how to have really great business conversations, but how to also take a look at the rest of yourself, and how the other pieces of self are motivating our conversations and maybe limiting our conversations. So I think if you really want to be successful, we can talk about business and only business all day long, but at the end of the day, we've got to talk about all the other things that are impacting our business. So I'm really excited about that. I've already learned so much from you in what you've learned in this Landmark Forum. And I did end up tuning into that course with you a couple nights ago. And that was really cool, just listening to people's testimonies about what it's been like to kind of get right with yourself. So I'm just excited.
You know what's great about being open, right? My new way of being is, instead of trying to control the outcome of the podcast, and Jakub, you've probably seen this, I have to do some training here. I have to learn people. I have to teach them up. When you're open, then people come along and say, hey, here's another direction that you can go. So Jules, thank you for doing that and being that. Jakub, what's your parting shot?
No parting shots. Thank you guys for being on. Thank you for having me. The mental awareness and all that stuff, support it. Whatever you want to do, donations, push-ups, however. Make sure those conversations with yourself are positive. And again, thank you for having me, and thank you to our co-hosts.
Yes, thank you for having me as well. I really appreciate it.
Oh, now I'm going to take you guys out with 5 variations on the expression "sky's the limit."
Go.
Ready? The sky is not the limit. It's just the beginning. The sky is not the limit. Your mind is the limit. The sky is not the limit. The mind is the limit that sees the sky as the limit. Never believe that the sky is the limit, because there are footprints on the moon.
That's a good one.
And your only limit is you and the conversations that you have with yourself and others. Now, I realized when I didn't come up with all these, the magic of Google helped me there. And when you type in "sky's the limit," the first thing that comes up is Notorious B.I.G. "Sky's the limit."
Yes.
I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to rap on that. But I do want to say thank you, all of you, for being a part of this conversation about conversations. We really appreciate you. We are building here to a large conversation, as you said, Jules, not just about business, but about life. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.